We are on the eve of maybe the single biggest game in BYU football history. The Cougars have a chance to hoist a Big 12 championship trophy and punch their ticket to play for a national championship. And all it takes is one W.
You are Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast on the BYU Cougars. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast focused on the BYU Cougars. Thank you for making Locked On Podcast Network America's #1 sports podcast network. I'm Jake Hatch, executive producer of the KSL Sports Zone in Salt Lake City, Utah, and a 14-year credentialed media member at BYU. I am your resident expert and insider as your host here on this show. And as always, thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Coming up on today's show, we are previewing BYU and Texas Tech Big 12 championship game. We are here. It is ready to go at a sold-out AT&T Stadium. We'll examine that. Then we're going to talk about the BYU football program cleaning up with Big 12 postseason awards, 20 different individuals being receiving citations, I should say, from the Big 12 conference. We'll explain the importance of that. And we'll finish up today's show with a couple of questions, one in particular about BYU and the reported $10 to $15 million investment in NIL resources. Is that going to run afoul of the House settlement? And we'll explain what's going on with regards to all that based on some comments from Brian Santiago yesterday on the KSL Sports Zone. It's all brought to you today by our friends over at FanDuel. If you want to be right in the middle of the action all season long, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long with FanDuel. All right, let's get right into it. And it is a huge game coming up tomorrow morning at AT&T Stadium. It's essentially a standalone game. I know that I think it's the Sun Belt that has a game kicking off around the same time, but this game, speaking of the Big 12 championship, features two first-time teams in the Big 12 title game. Texas Tech, who has been a charter member of the Big 12 conference. They have never played in this game. And BYU, one of the newcomers to this league in just their third season as members, they're playing for their first Big 12 title. So there's history on the line here. And it's also going to be historic considering it is supposed to be the most attended Big 12 championship game quite literally ever. Eat your hearts out, Texas and Oklahoma. Y'all never had the same type of crowd that Tech and BYU are expected to put in AT&T Stadium. And I think the place is going to be absolutely electric, just speaking of the energy in the crowd. And I, for one, am looking forward to being there, and I'll be on my way down there later on this afternoon. But you look at the matchup in this game, and I could kind of go stat for stat, player for player with you guys, talking about, okay, let's compare Bear Bachmeier versus Behren Morton. Let's talk about LJ Martin versus Cameron Dickey. How about the matchup of David Bailey versus a guy like Jack Kelly opposite one another on both of these defenses? I could go man for man, stat for stat, but it feels like to me, rather than do that and bore you with the minutia, I'm going to look at this more from the, 30,000 foot view side of things, and why I believe, as I said in the open of today's show, this might be the single biggest game in BYU football history. At least in 41 years since BYU won that Holiday Bowl in 1984 and ultimately hoisted the national championship trophy that season. It's the only national title in BYU football history. The reason why I believe this game maybe has even higher stakes than that is because, one, you can establish yourself in some people's minds as one of the preeminent powers in the Big 12 conference with a win in this game, but also, as we've talked about ad nauseum, the College Football Playoff Committee appears to just absolutely have every intention of denigrating, downgrading, and ultimately demolishing any accomplishment BYU has this season and any hope, it feels like, of them playing for a national championship as a member of the field in the College Football Playoff. The good news is, on the flip side of everything they've tried to do, is the BYU, if they win, they're in. That's the good news. You got 60 minutes of football. If you have the winning score on the scoreboard at the end of this one, more than Texas Tech, you're playing in the playoff and you're playing for a national championship. And that would bust down the door, break through the glass ceiling, and essentially send a shot across the bow of the College Football Playoff Committee saying, y'all thought you could keep us out. We just did the darn thing, and you can't stop us. That is why this is such a huge opportunity for BYU. Is, yes, you get to hang a banner and say we were Big 12 champions in 2025. You get to hoist that trophy after the game with Brett Yormark down there, I'm sure, handing it off to Kalani Sitake and the players. All of that is awesome. But I think it's more importantly, it signals, I think, across college football that this is a BYU football program and a BYU athletic department that is here to play ball. You don't have to look very far. Look back just a few days. BYU put together an unprecedented contract extension to keep Kalani Sitake in place when one of the bluest of the blue bloods, the Penn State Nittany Lions, came calling and put on a full court press to pry away your head coach. It would have been a really unfortunate precedent to see BYU have their coach picked off. And to BYU's credit, they got the deal done, kept him in place. And I think that Kalani Sitake's new contract is going to be a rallying point for this BYU football program. There were, I'm sure, were a ton of guys who were really nervous in the early part of this week, wondering, hey, is my head coach going to be my head coach that much longer? And then when he announced at practice on Tuesday evening before he went and addressed the media about it, he said, hey, guys, I'm staying here. The reaction from those players, I think, spoke volumes as to how BYU's football program responds to their head coach. And I think they are playing in this game for more than just themselves, for more than just a Big 12 title game, for more than maybe a chance to play for a national championship. All those things are uber important. But I think they want to make sure that BYU's newfound faith in their head man, speaking of Kalani Sitake, it's well-founded and shows that these players, they respond and they want to play for their head coach. I think BYU's got a little extra juice coming into this game, but is it enough? Because I could, as I said, go down the stats and show you how I feel like Texas Tech really has very few, if any, weaknesses according to metrics out there. They are an incredibly well put together football program that every program, BYU included, should aspire to have the balance, the overall cohesion, and everything else that Texas Tech has in this game. And it's going to be a really tough task for BYU to win this game. And I'm not going to bury the lead any longer. I'll tell you right now, I'm picking Texas Tech to win this game. Oh, Jake, how could you? You're supposed to be homerific on the. Let me reiterate, going back over a month, if you're an everyday, remember when we talked in the lead up to that Texas Tech game, I said I had a decision to make. I had my gut and my heart telling me one thing, and I had my head telling me another. And I ultimately went with my gut and my heart and picked BYU to win that game and keep what was then an undefeated season alive. Well, it didn't work out, 27-9. And maybe I'm not learning my lesson, but I'm going with my head this time. But with this caveat, I think Texas Tech wins this game, but I think BYU puts on a performance that is going to have the College Football Playoff Committee, at least in theory, thinking, hey, maybe that program's a little better than we thought. And the fact that they have 11 wins versus 1 loss going into the game, maybe we should reconsider them a little heavier. And we'll see if what Brett Yormark apparently has been doing behind the scenes, to lobby for BYU pays dividends as well. But I think that BYU is going to put on a far better effort in this game, at least in my mind, they should. And if they do that, I think they'll have a bigger shout to make it in as an at-large team in the college football playoff. But I also can't discount the fact that BYU, they may find just enough spark to go out there and put together an incredible upset. And like I said, knock down the door, break through that glass ceiling, and play in the college football playoff. All of that is there for BYU. But I'll give you my score right now. I have got Texas Tech scoring the same amount of points almost as they did in that game in Lubbock. But I've got Texas Tech 27, BYU 21. And I think it's a uber competitive game the entire way. And I think BYU hangs tough with Tech all the way through, having guys like LJ Morton, Sione Moa back in this lineup, Justin Kirkland along the defensive line. The reinforcements are going to make BYU that much more formidable in this game, but I just don't know that it's enough to get over the top. But I hope it does enough to punch BYU's ticket into the playoff field. Coming up next, though, we had a number of players and a certain head coach who cleaned up when it comes to postseason awards in the Big 12 Conference, and rightfully so. We'll break down the importance of that, and more importantly, the importance of that. Yeah, that's a pun intended. But we'll talk about why it's such a big deal to see these BYU athletes and coaches being honored by their conference, and we'll get into that next right here on Locked On Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Now, NFL Sundays move fast. One big play and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel that much more exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it literally in real time, and you're putting your money where your mouth is. With FanDuel, you can place live bets as the action unfolds every drive, every momentum swing, and literally on every highlight moment, and it's all courtesy of your friends over at FanDuel. Live betting is best when the game starts to shift, a receiver gets hot, a defense tightens up, or the momentum flips after a big big turnover in those games. And FanDuel lets you jump in on the moment. Live spreads and money lines adjust instantly. Player props update as guys heat up. You can bet next touchdown scores, drive results, totals, and more. It keeps you locked into every snap, every drive, and of course, every possibility. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action all season long, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long, courtesy of your friends over at FanDuel. As they like to say, the game moves fast, and so can you. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Hope you are doing fantastic out there in Cougar Nation. And once again, thank you for making Locked On America's #1 sports podcast network. All right, if you missed the news yesterday, the postseason awards came out from the Big 12 Conference about Coach of the Year, player, all the different awards as you would expect. And BYU, very well represented in this. And first off, got to say congratulations in order to Kalani Sitake. He's been named the Chuck Ninus Coach of the Year in the Big 12 Conference. And that is the right decision, honestly, because think about where BYU is kind of slated. They didn't have necessarily an established quarterback coming into this year. And all they've done is rattle off 11 wins against 1 loss. And I know that Texas Tech probably had Joey McGuire thinking he could win it. Well, Texas Tech was expected to be maybe the big dog of the league, and they've proven to be just that. So I think that the upstart nature of BYU is what ultimately tided BYU over with that victory. Also need to give a big shout out. LJ Morton, I mentioned it a couple of times in recent that he was in the mix to be the most valuable, or not the most valuable, the Big 12 Offensive Player of the Year, and that went to LJ Morton. He has been nothing short of remarkable. He's gone over 1,200 yards, a career high, very well maybe find himself this time next year in the NFL. I'm not trying to burst anybody's bubble, but based on what he's performed, the way he's performed, especially with an ailing shoulder. Remember, he got injured right before BYU's second bye week at Iowa State, and he's been playing through pain and that whatever the damage is in that shoulder throughout the entirety of the rest of the season. He's been nothing short of remarkable. So congratulations to him. And then joining him on that first team from the All Big 12 side of things, LJ Morton, center Bruce Mitchell, which, by the way, we have not talked enough about Bruce Mitchell and his transformation into one of the elite offensive linemen for BYU this season. To see a first-team honor for him is awesome. Jack Kelly, he's been Mr. Do Everything for BYU defensively, and a guy whose story just continues to unfold and just be a fairy tale, Tanner Wall. I mentioned it before the season. You can go back and listen to me. I said I thought he was going to be a fringe all-conference player. Well, no, he's no longer a fringe all-conference player. He is a first-team all-conference player in Tanner Wall. It's awesome to see those four getting those honors. And then you're probably wondering, well, okay, what about Bear Bachmeier, Jake? Well, he was named, as you might expect, Big 12 Offensive Freshman of the Year. That's very valid. Bear has been nothing short of absolutely remarkable this season. It was kind of funny. I wonder if you can't do it if you win an individual award where you can't end up on one of the conference list in terms of the first, second, or third team offense or defense, because he didn't make those lists. It was just kind of just a unique thing. I wonder if it's just because he had the individual award, they left him off there. And then if you want to go down the rest of the awards real quick, all Big 12 second team included Will Ferrin as kicker and Parker Kingston, both wide receiver and punt returner. Third team honorees included Chase Roberts, which I was a bit surprised that Chase is actually on the third team. I thought he might have made the second team. Isaiah Jod at offensive tackle, Isaiah Glasker linebacker, and Falatau Satuwala, all third-team honorees. And then they'll obviously have honorable mentions, including Carson Ryan, Garrison Grimes, Evan Johnson, Bodie Schoonover, Keanu Tanavasa, and John Taumoepeau. So 20 individuals from BYU getting postseason awards from the Big 12 Conference, and I think every one of them is valid. Outside of maybe, like I said, Chase Roberts, I would have had him on the second team, but I also don't get a say in this because I don't vote on this award. It's the coaches who do it, and they can't vote for their own players. I think it's awesome to see Kalani Sitake being rewarded by his peers, LJ Morton for what he's meant to BYU's offense, rightfully being named Big 12 Offensive Player of the Year because he's been the engine that made BYU run, and then his backfield compatriot and just the incredible season that is this year for Bear Bachmeier. Cool to see them get those individual awards, but also fun to see players spread across the first, second, and third team awards that came out. It wasn't that long ago. Remember, coming into the season, I said it was an absolute farce that both Isaiah Glasker and Jack Kelly got no action in terms of being a preseason all-conference player. And they proved to be all-conference types in case of Glasker on the third team and Jack Kelly as a first-team honoree. All of that is awesome. Awesome to see, and proves that BYU, while they still may be a developmental program, that development, it yields elite football players. I say it a lot on this podcast. The BYU for years made hay with 2 and 3-star talents that through just sheer work and dedication and talent development got 4 and 5-star production out of those players. The nice part is going forward for BYU, in theory, they should bring in more high-end 3-stars, 4 stars, and heaven forbid, a 5-star every so often, which I still think Ryder Lyon should have that 5th star, but it was taken away from him. But you look at it, if BYU can do what they did and what they've built with 2 and 3-star talents, the fact that they have 7 4-stars, if I recall correctly, in this year's recruiting class, that means BYU, with the development that you expect to come for those players, should be even better in future seasons than they are right now. And they're pretty downright elite right now. They're 22 and 3 in the past 2 seasons. BYU is a wagon, to use that expression right now. And the nice part is it looks like there is still plenty in reserve for BYU, both players, resources, etc., to make sure that the Cougars are going to be a force for years to come. I love the fact that the Big 12 rewarded BYU for the season they had with these awards, because it's an acknowledgement, a tip of the cap, and a just kind of attaboy to the BYU football program for showing what they're capable of early on in their tenure at the Power 4 level. I remember having conversations, and we did it on this podcast going all the way back to the offseason 2023, leading up to the 2023 football season for BYU, wondering, hey, how long will it take before BYU has multiple all Big 12 honorees? And how long will it be before BYU plays for a Big 12 championship? And I thought, I'm thinking back hundreds of podcasts ago, but thinking back on it, I probably would have ventured to guess that maybe they could compete for a Big 12 title within 5 years, and to have multiple players on the Big 12 championship, the Big 12, all Big 12 teams, maybe 2 or 3 years. So maybe they're on track with the multiple all Big 12 honorees. But the fact that they're also playing for a Big 12 championship shows the incredible transformation that BYU has undergone, and they've done it in quite literally record time. Remember, when Utah transitioned from the Mountain West into the Pac-12, they had a surprise 8-5 campaign their first year, but then the next 2 seasons struggled to 5-7 records. BYU has kind of bucked that trend. They went 5-7 their first year, and it was a really, really tough way to have your first year in the Big 12 end in double overtime, losing on a dreary, cold day at Oklahoma State. But from that point on, BYU, I use the term they're a wagon, all they've done is just keep rolling. 22 and 3, have had come within a whisker, it feels like, of playing for a Big 12 title a season ago that they felt like they deserved. And now to actually be playing for all the marbles in the Big 12 and have all these players being honored by the conference, it's a fantastic, fantastic thing to see this football program become what it's become. And I just got to say a public congratulations to Kalani Sitake and his football program. It is awesome to see them getting all of these accolades, all of these citations, and I'm sure there'll be more that roll in. Publications like Phil Steele's College Football Preview, they'll do theirs. But here's the thing. My question is, no matter how the season ends for BYU, they have put together 4 10-win seasons in the past 6 years alone. Never once have they been in the preseason polls in any of those years. Maybe next year, the national media, the national narratives will actually say, hey, let's rank BYU in the preseason poll. I'm also not going to hold my breath, but we'll see if it actually plays out that way. All right, coming up next, I had a couple of you ask about BYU and the $10 to $15 million they reportedly are investing on top of revenue share money from the House settlement in terms of NIL money for player acquisition, player retainment. How does that square up with the House settlement? And is BYU going to find themselves in hot water? We'll try and make heads and tails and explain exactly what's going on with that next, right here on the Locked On Cougars podcast. Today's show is brought to you by Aura Frames. The holidays are officially here, which means gift hunting season is on. If you want something meaningful, personal, and guaranteed to get a reaction, Aura Frames is the gift that gives and delivers every single time. It's not just something you wrap. It's a way to share your memories along the way, because Aura is not your average picture frame. You can preload the frame with photos before you even gift it, so when they plug it in, the memories are quite literally already there. No apps to figure out, no setup headaches, just instant smiles. Grandparents, parents, newlyweds, anybody who loves photos could benefit from this. The best part is you can analyze a personalized message right inside the frame, so the gift feels thoughtful from the moment it is open. And packaging comes gift ready, no price tag, no wrapping needed. It's all a huge win, obviously, when it comes to this time of year. It's a holiday gift that actually gets used, not forgotten in a drawer, which is also an important part of this season. So for a limited time, save on the perfect gift by visiting ourframes.com and get $35 off Our's best-selling Carver mat frames, number one named by Wirecutter, by using the promo code COLLEGE at checkout. That's AURAFrames.com using the promo code COLLEGE. This still is exclusive to listeners, and frames will sell out fast. So order yours now to get it in time for the holidays. Support the show by mentioning, by the way, Locked On Cougars at checkout. And of course, terms and conditions apply. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. If you've not joined the Locked On Cougars Insider Group, get the inside scoop on all things BYU you want by joining us today. Just $5 a month to be a part of the Insiders Group. And, it's a couple of days out. Monday, get ready. There's a new era of the Insiders Group coming. I'll just put it that way. And I am uber excited for it, and it's going to involve more of me and you. So think about that. You want more of that? Stay tuned Monday. We'll have more for you guys on that. But join the Locked On Cougars Insider Group today and be a part of it. Link is in the show notes below. All right. Before we go on today's show, let's talk about an interesting question that was sent to me. Actually, it's kind of an amalgamation of about 3 different questions that came via the Insiders Group this week. And we're not going to do a full Insiders Group mailbag today because those enhancements that are coming on Monday, that involves mailbags. And we'll, like I said, stay tuned. Monday's going to be an exciting day. But the question essentially came down to, Jake, I have seen the BYU is going to give Kalani Sitake and the BYU football program somewhere between $10 and $15 million on top of their revenue share that they have to obviously go out and attract players and talent to BYU, but more importantly, retain that talent, because we all know the transfer portal, it's pretty wild, and guys are being not coerced, but essentially enticed. That's it. Enticed to move into the transfer portal and via money and the types of different things that happen. Tampering is what the technical term is for it from the NCAA. But there has been this thing, the House settlement that came out, and they've created what they call the College Sports Commission. And they have sent out a document, it's 8 pages long, that essentially have asked every Power 4 program, BYU included, to sign to put everybody on what they're calling a level playing field with uniform enforcement across the board. And essentially, there will be no shenanigans when it comes to transfer portal stuff and the like, and it's supposed to keep everybody on the same page. Well, the response was pretty swift in the negative, and BYU's opponent tomorrow in Texas Tech was actually kind of the poster child for that, going kind of point by point back, saying that it violated state law in the state of Texas to agree to certain parts of the CSC agreement, and they weren't necessarily willing to sign away their rights to retain legal representation should a judgment go against them, because the CSC agreement essentially has you sign away your rights to sue the CSC, the Power 4, the Big 12, whatever it is. In terms of you run afoul of the rules, you have no right to essentially challenge. It's their judge, jury, and executioner. I've been meaning to talk about this topic, and I was actually planning on talking. I remember the day I talked about the situation with Cincinnati that went absolutely viral. And by the way, thank you to all of you for your very kind comments about that. And I haven't had a chance to address it since. It is my opinion, and like I said, I don't speak for BYU. I never will speak for BYU because that's just not the role I'm in. I am an independent contractor doing this podcast. But from my vantage point, that CSC agreement is hanging an anchor around your neck and thinking you're going to be just fine because you sign away your rights as a athletic department, as a football program, to essentially allow the College Sports Commission to dole out punishments, and you have no recourse in terms of appealing and the like. I know that they've put some things in there that you can appeal to a certain level, but essentially you sign away any chance. Let's say it's absolutely egregious and you did no wrong. You sign away the right to put together a legal team to go out and represent you. And I know it sounds like defiant to be like, Jake, BYU should be willing to get on the same page with everybody else, but much like Texas Tech and there are very, very few programs, as I understand it, that are willing to sign that document as is. So here's the deal. Let's say BYU does sign that document, and suddenly they're bound to those rules. Well, the situation is, I don't believe for a second that anybody, SEC, Big 10, ACC, or even maybe in the Big 12, are all going to stay on the same page and all play patty cake with one another and say, hey, kumbaya, we're good now. No. college football has been rife with people trying to work in the margins and find loopholes to the rules literally since the inception of the sport 150 plus years ago. It has been rife with corruption and with all kinds of people doing seedy, shady things. The bagmen of the SEC of yesteryear, all the different things you can think of that college football has endured. The fact that they thought they were going to clean this up with an 8-page document that tells everybody, hey, sign your rights away. And they thought everybody's going to be like, yeah, we're good. Let's do this thing. No, it's not. Nobody should do this. Nobody should do this and sign away your rights to, if let's say you do join the CSC agreement and all of a sudden they decide that you've broken the rules, but you know in your heart of hearts and you have hard and fast evidence you didn't do it. The fact that you couldn't bring together a legal team, your own in-house counsel, the like, couldn't defend you against those accusations and you're having punishments imposed on you. Yeah, I understand why Texas Tech was like, yeah, no way we're doing this. And yes, I think there's an element to it that Texas Tech is thinking, no, we've got an advantage here with what we've done in an NIL and allocating extra funds. And BYU's announcement, or at least the reports from On3 saying that they were going to allocate that extra $10 to $15 million on top of the $20.5 million from the revenue share side of things. It was kind of thumbing your nose at the NCAA in a way saying, hey, y'all thought you're going to control this. You ain't controlling anything. Do I think that we're going to go back to the Wild West that NIL was and the transfer portal was early on when they first adopted those measures? I don't think it'll ever get back to that same level, but I also don't believe for a second had everybody, and I'm including, like I said, the 60 plus whatever Power 4 programs, had they all decided we're all signing this document to join the CSC and have it be the enforcement arm of what we've got going here with this House settlement, I don't believe for a second that other programs weren't going to try and do something, that's not kosher. It's just under the rules. BYU, they will always play within the rules. BYU has always operated within NCAA guidelines, and that includes what they've done with NIL and the like in the past and the transfer portal. They have adapted and bought into that. But when the rules are what they are, BYU, they play by them. And that's the only concern I have is that if BYU were to sign away their rights and they were to have gotten dinged by this CSC and the fact that they had just no legal recourse, yeah, it's a really tough look for me. So, yeah, I do think that BYU in some ways is telling the world that, hey, y'all thought that the CSC thing, the House settlement was done and it's going to make everything, like I said, level playing field in college football. No. It's never been that, and it never will be that. I got no problem saying that. There will always be bad actors in this sport that are going to, like I said, try and work in the margins, find loopholes that they can exploit. That's always going to be there. So why are we trying to essentially take away any and all rights from these individual universities and almost collectively say, hey, y'all are going to be bound by these rules? I get the whole idea of it is great in theory, but history tells us the practice, absolutely not. It's about as bad as it comes in terms of being the sport we all love. It is rife with all kinds of shady, seedy things that have happened in its history and might very well still be happening today. But I get the overarching, the 30,000 foot view on it saying, hey, this is what we want to do. And like everybody's like, oh yeah, it's a great idea. But when it comes to practice, yeah, I think everybody's kind of looking at each other like, you going to sign that? Yeah. You going to sign that? And they're all like, well, you sign it first. You go. Yeah. And they're all kind of like egging each other on, but nobody really wants to take the plunge because once again, it's putting an anchor around your neck and expecting that everybody else is going to have that same anchor around theirs. It'd be great if everybody did it, but history tells me that there's no way it's going to happen. I think BYU, the way they're operating right now, I think it's just fine. Call me crazy, and we'll see if they get dinged at some point for that type of behavior. But as I've mentioned, college football, it's a crazy sport. We all love it. And I also don't think that BYU should I don't think they should sign away their rights under those CSC guidelines. Maybe there's a revision or two in there that they find to their liking. Sure, maybe you sign it then. But I also understand that if BYU ever enters another agreement of that variety, everybody else that's in there is kind of like got the knife behind their back. Like, all right, what are you doing? It's just it's all a poker game, and it's like who's actually gonna play by the rules and who's gonna, as I mentioned, find loopholes, exploit them, and create a whole nother situation that will require another commission and another set of bylaws. It's a never ending cycle when it comes to college football. All right, that is going to do it for today's edition of the show. Hope you guys are all doing fantastic out there. If you're going to be down there for the game, I'm going to send out a text to our Insiders group members, and I'll maybe put it on social media. I'm going to find some spot in AT&T Stadium. Would love to say hi to as many of you. If you see me wandering around, please don't hesitate to stop and say hello. I've had people tell me that I was too scared to stop you. I will always stop and say what's up, at least minimum to you guys. So if you're down there at AT&T Stadium tomorrow morning, I look forward to meeting many of you out there in the wild, as I like to say. But as always, thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen today. Go make your second listen. Our friends over at the Locked On Big 12 podcast, that'd be our good friend Drake Toll, doing a great job covering our sport and the conference that BYU calls home. Check that out. And obviously, as always, thank you for being here and being an everydayer on the Locked On Cougars podcast.